October 15, 2023, started with promise. Two lifelong friends, 28-year-old Emma Rodriguez and 26-year-old Sophia Chun, loaded their matching Patagonia backpacks into Emma's car for what should have been a relaxing weekend at Cascade Falls State Park in Northern California. Emma, glowing at 6 months pregnant with her first child, had been looking forward to this trip for weeks. Her demanding job as a pediatric surgeon at UCSF had been taking its toll, and her husband Marcus had insisted she take some time to decompress before the baby arrived. Sophia, Emma's college roommate turned business partner in their successful meditation app startup Mindful Mamas, was equally excited for the getaway. She'd been working 18-hour days preparing for their Series B funding round and desperately needed to recharge. The plan was simple: a gentle 2-day hike to the falls, overnight camping, then back home Sunday evening. Emma's pregnancy limited them to easy trails, but both women were experienced hikers who knew the area well. At 7:30 a.m., Emma posted a photo on Instagram of their loaded car with the caption, "Baby bump hiking adventure with my soul sister. See you Sunday." It would be the last anyone heard from either woman. By Monday morning, panic had set in. Emma's husband Marcus had expected a text Sunday night confirming they were home safe. When his calls went straight to voicemail, he drove to Sophia's apartment. Empty, with no sign she'd returned. Marcus contacted the park rangers at 6 a.m. Monday. Rangers confirmed that Emma's Subaru was still in the Cascade Falls parking lot, exactly where she'd left it Saturday morning. The women's camping gear was gone, suggesting they'd successfully begun their hike. Search and rescue teams deployed immediately. The trail to Cascade Falls was well marked and heavily trafficked. It seemed impossible that two experienced hikers could simply vanish. But as hours turned to days with no trace of Emma or Sophia, the investigation took an ominous turn. On Thursday, October 19th, 4 days after the women disappeared, a helicopter pilot conducting aerial reconnaissance spotted something that made his blood run cold. Far below the main hiking trail, in a ravine accessible only by an unmarked logging road, sat a mangled Toyota Camry. The red SUV had clearly been there for some time, partially hidden halfway into the ground. What made the discovery shocking wasn't just the car's location. It was the California license plate that didn't match either missing woman's vehicle. Search teams rappelled down to investigate. Inside the crushed vehicle, they found personal belongings that would rewrite everything they thought they knew about Emma Rodriguez and Sophia Chun. The crashed Toyota contained items that initially made no sense to investigators. A fake passport bearing Emma's photo but the name Isabella Santos. A second fake passport with Sophia's photo under the name Maria Gonzalez. $47,000 in cash, bundled with rubber bands. A handwritten list of names and phone numbers in multiple countries. Prepaid cell phones with international calling plans. A manila envelope containing photographs of men neither woman's families recognized. Most disturbing of all, ultrasound photos of Emma's baby, but with someone else's name on the medical forms. Detective Sarah Morrison, lead investigator on the case, knew immediately they weren't dealing with a simple hiking accident. "These women weren't who we thought they were," Morrison later told reporters. "Everything we knew about them was starting to unravel." As investigators dug deeper into the contents of the crashed car, a stunning picture emerged. Emma Rodriguez and Sophia Chun, successful entrepreneur and pediatric surgeon, had been living elaborate double lives. The handwritten list found in the vehicle contained contact information for surrogacy brokers in Mexico, Thailand, and Ukraine. Cross-referencing with financial records revealed that both women had been receiving large payments from overseas accounts for the past 3 years. But this wasn't just about money. Digital forensics on the recovered phones revealed encrypted communications discussing packages, deliveries, and clients, language that investigators recognized from human trafficking cases. The ultrasound photos with falsified names suggested something even more sinister. Emma's pregnancy wasn't the joyful family expansion everyone believed it to be. Working with Interpol, investigators discovered that Isabela Santos and Maria Gonzalez were wanted by authorities in 5 countries. The women had been operating an international surrogacy fraud ring, taking payments from desperate couples while never intending to deliver babies. But Emma's current pregnancy complicated their usual scheme. DNA testing on biological samples from the crashed car revealed that the baby Emma was carrying wasn't genetically related to her or her husband Marcus. The truth was staggering. Emma had undergone illegal embryo implantation with genetic material stolen from clients of high-end fertility clinics. She was essentially a surrogate carrying a baby that belonged to other people who had no idea their genetic material had been stolen. Sophia's role was equally disturbing. As the business operations manager, she had been recruiting vulnerable women worldwide to serve as surrogates, often through deception and coercion. International investigations revealed the true scope of Emma and Sophia's crimes. Working through front companies and fake fertility clinics, they had defrauded over 200 couples of more than $3.2 million in fake surrogacy fees, stolen genetic material from 47 fertility clinics across 4 countries, trafficked 23 women across international borders under false pretenses, operated illegal surrogacy operations in countries where the practice was banned. The women who had trusted them were left devastated, not only financially ruined but robbed of their dreams of parenthood. Maria Santos, one victim from Madrid, had paid Emma and Sophia $75,000 for surrogacy services that never materialized. They showed me photos of my surrogate, gave me fake medical updates, even sent ultrasound images, Santos told investigators. For 8 months, I believed I was going to be a mother. When I finally traveled to meet my baby, there was nothing. No clinic, no surrogate, no baby. They had vanished with my money and my dreams. With Emma and Sophia's true identities exposed, the search took on international dimensions. The FBI, working with law enforcement agencies in 12 countries, launched one of the largest human trafficking investigations in recent history. But the women remained ghosts. The crashed Toyota had been stolen 3 weeks earlier from a parking garage in Los Angeles. Security footage showed 2 figures matching Emma and Sophia's descriptions abandoning the vehicle at the ravine, but they disappeared into the wilderness on foot. Search teams scoured thousands of acres of forest, following every lead and possible escape route. But Emma and Sophia seemed to have vanished as completely as they had from their victims' lives. The case cracked open on October 28, nearly 2 weeks after the women's disappearance, when a park ranger discovered something extraordinary. A makeshift camp hidden deep in the forest, equipped with supplies that could sustain someone for months. But the camp wasn't occupied by Emma and Sophia. Instead, investigators found Maria Vasquez, a 19-year-old woman from Guatemala who had been missing for 6 months. Maria's story was heartbreaking. She had been recruited by Sophia through a fake modeling agency, promised legitimate work in the United States. Instead, she had been forced to serve as a surrogate, held against her will in various locations while carrying a baby for paying clients. When Emma became pregnant herself, breaking their own rules about operational security, Maria had been brought to the forest camp as a backup plan. If Emma's pregnancy failed or was discovered, Maria would serve as a replacement surrogate. They told me I was insurance, Maria told investigators through tears, that if anything went wrong with Emma's pregnancy, I would have to give birth and pretend the baby was hers. Maria's rescue provided investigators with crucial intelligence about Emma and Sophia's whereabouts. She revealed that the women had been planning their escape for months, stockpiling supplies and establishing hideouts throughout the forest. But they had made one critical mistake. Emma's advanced pregnancy meant they couldn't travel far or fast. They were somewhere in the vast wilderness, but time was running out, both for the investigation and for Emma's unborn child. On November 3rd, thermal imaging from police helicopters detected 2 heat signatures in a remote canyon 12 miles from where Maria had been found. Ground teams moved in carefully. Both women were considered armed and extremely dangerous. The final confrontation took place at dawn on November 4th, in a makeshift shelter constructed from camping gear and natural materials. Emma, now 8 months pregnant and in obvious distress, was found suffering from complications that required immediate medical attention. Sophia, cornered and facing life in prison, made one last desperate attempt to escape. She drew a handgun and fired at the approaching SWAT team before being subdued by return fire. She survived her injuries but was immediately taken into custody. Emma, barely conscious and going into premature labor, was airlifted to the nearest hospital. The baby, genetically belonging to a couple in Switzerland who had been searching for their stolen embryo for over a year, was delivered safely and immediately placed in protective custody. The investigation into Emma Rodriguez and Sophia Chen's international surrogacy fraud ring became one of the largest human trafficking cases in U.S. history. Both women were charged with 47 counts of human trafficking, 203 counts of fraud, 12 counts of kidnapping, 8 counts of identity theft, 23 counts of conspiracy to commit international crimes. But the charges were just the beginning. As their network unraveled, investigators discovered connections to organized crime syndicates in Eastern Europe, illegal adoption rings in South America, and corrupt fertility clinics across 3 continents. The trial, which began 8 months later, featured testimony from dozens of victims whose lives had been destroyed by Emma and Sophia's operations. Dr. James Mitchell, whose fertility clinic in Los Angeles had been infiltrated by the women, described how they had systematically stolen genetic material from his patients. They presented themselves as legitimate medical professionals conducting research. We had no idea they were harvesting eggs and sperm samples to use in their illegal surrogacy operations. My patients trusted me to protect their most precious genetic material, and I failed them. Lisa and David Park, a couple from Seoul who had paid $85,000 for surrogacy services, traveled to California to confront their tormentors. We spent our life savings believing we would finally have a child. These women didn't just steal our money. They stole years of our lives, our hope, our faith in humanity. The emotional trauma will never heal. On March 15, 2024, Emma Rodriguez was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Despite her cooperation with investigators and expressions of remorse, Judge Patricia Williams showed no mercy. You exploited the deepest desires of the human heart, the desire to create and nurture life. You turned the miracle of pregnancy into a weapon of deception and destroyed the dreams of hundreds of innocent people. Sophia Chen received an even harsher sentence: life in prison without parole, plus 85 years on federal charges. Her role as the mastermind of the operation and her attempt to shoot law enforcement officers during arrest sealed her fate. You showed no remorse, no recognition of the profound harm you caused, Judge Williams told Sophia. You treated human life as a commodity and showed complete disregard for the suffering you inflicted. The child born to Emma Rodriguez, genetically belonging to Swiss couple Hans and Elena Mueller, became the center of an international custody battle. The Muellers had been trying to conceive for 7 years before their stolen genetic material was used without their knowledge. After months of legal proceedings, the baby was returned to her biological parents. The Muellers, who named their daughter Hope, established a foundation to help other victims of fertility fraud and to support reforms in international surrogacy laws. Our daughter came to us through unimaginable circumstances, Elena Mueller said. But she represents hope. Hope that good can come from evil, that families can heal, and that justice can prevail. Even after Emma and Sophia's convictions, investigators continue uncovering the full scope of their criminal network. To date, they have recovered over $1.8 million in stolen funds, identified 47 additional victims across 12 countries, shut down 8 illegal fertility clinics, rescued 12 women being held against their will as surrogates. The case led to major reforms in international surrogacy laws and increased cooperation between law enforcement agencies worldwide to combat fertility fraud. In retrospect, there were signs that Emma and Sophia were not who they appeared to be. Colleagues noted their frequent international travel, unexplained wealth, and secretive behavior about their business operations. Emma's husband Marcus, devastated by the revelations about his wife, struggled to understand how he had been deceived so completely. I lived with her for 5 years and had no idea who she really was. The pregnancy I thought was our miracle child was actually part of an elaborate criminal scheme. I don't know how to trust anyone anymore. The case highlighted the importance of due diligence in international surrogacy arrangements and the need for stronger regulations to protect vulnerable people from exploitation. The Emma Rodriguez and Sophia Chen case sent shockwaves through the international fertility industry. Countries around the world tightened regulations on surrogacy arrangements, implemented stronger background check requirements for fertility professionals, and increased penalties for human trafficking related to reproductive services. The case also sparked important conversations about the ethics of international surrogacy and the need to protect both intended parents and surrogate mothers from exploitation. Today, the women who once presented themselves as successful entrepreneurs and medical professionals serve as a cautionary tale about the dark side of the fertility industry. Their elaborate deception destroyed hundreds of lives and shook faith in international surrogacy arrangements. But their capture also demonstrated the power of international cooperation in combating human trafficking and the importance of never giving up hope in the search for justice. The crashed car that initially seemed like a tragic accident ultimately exposed one of the most sophisticated fertility fraud operations in history, proving that sometimes the most shocking secrets are hidden in the most unexpected places. The hiking trip that was supposed to be a peaceful weekend getaway became the beginning of the end for 2 women whose double lives finally caught up with them. In the end, justice prevailed, victims found closure, and a baby found her way home to the parents who had never stopped searching for her.